As Republicans are preparing for unified government, Democrats are just trying to pick up the pieces, trying to figure out what went wrong and how to rebuild a coalition that Donald Trump has picked apart. The next chairman of the Democratic National Committee will play a big role in that task. Joining me now is Ben Wikler, the chairman of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. And Ben, I know you've been considering entering the race for DNC chairman, so are you running?
Manu, it's great to join you this morning. I'm running for chair of the Democratic National Committee because we need to unite, we need to fight, and we need to win to stop the GOP from ripping this country apart and ripping off working people to enrich mega billionaires who funded Trump's campaign. This is a time for Democrats to come together to learn about what we need to do and change and to start winning elections up and down the ballot for the next 4 years.
But what do you say to some people? Maybe your opponents might say, look, you were a leader, party leader in a state that Kamala Harris lost. She lost in Wisconsin in 2024. So why give him a promotion?
Well, the thing about the last 4 years is that we've seen a Republican Party that in Wisconsin came in and tried to dismantle our democracy, robbed working people, smashed unions, attacked public schools, restricted voting rights, and Democrats organized, united, and fought back. And over these last 4 years, we've won election after election. Biden in 2020, Governor Evers in 2022, we flipped our state Supreme Court majority. This year, we had the smallest swing of any battleground state in the country, just 1.5 points towards Trump. It was the closest state in the union. And at the same time, we turned out more votes and won our U.S. Senate race for Tammy Baldwin and flipped 14 state legislative seats. This is a purple, intense state. And what it teaches you when you fight in a state like Wisconsin is how to organize everywhere in rural areas, cities, suburbs, small towns, across race, ethnicity, gender, geography, generation, ideology. It teaches you to communicate, even to voters who may not be paying attention to what Democrats have to say. We know that we lose when voters get their information about Democrats from Republicans. So we need to level up the intensity, the omnipresence of our fight, and we need to communicate directly to working folks, no matter what they look like or where they live, about how we're on their side and the Republicans are trying to rip them off.
So obviously the big question is going to be for the next Democratic National Committee chairman to figure out what went wrong for the party, try to fix all the problems that were very apparent in this election cycle. So for you, if you were DNC chairman, what would you say is the biggest problem Democrats have to fix right now in order to appeal to voters and win elections?
The central problem is that voters, many voters have internalized this idea that Democrats are not on their side. They're not fighting for working families every day. They have other agendas. That is the Republicans' line of attack. And for Democrats, we show who we are through our actions and through how and where we communicate. We know that most Americans agree with Democrats that our economy should work for working people, that every person should have the fundamental freedom and dignity and respect that should be every American's birthright. And we know that if we don't go where the voters are, if we don't communicate in language that hits home, that demonstrates that we understand the economic pain that people feel, the fear that people feel now about what Trump and his administration plan to do to try to attack them, and to show that we're on their side and show who Republicans are for. If we don't do that, then we're going to lose. But if we do that, we can win as we've done over and over. We came up short in an election where voters, the voters who turned out, who had not voted in the last few elections, who moved towards Trump, overwhelmingly, what we see in exit polls is that their frustration was around high prices at a moment when pandemic-era economic support had slipped away. Well, Trump plans to jack up people's prices. He plans a multi-trillion-dollar tax cut for the very wealthiest people in the country that will ultimately be paid for by working families. That is not popular, remotely popular. And if we want to defeat it, we have to be very clear who we're for and make that case.
So we're now headed into a position where Democrats are going to be the minority in the House and the Senate. And the question is, how should they position themselves in the minority? Should the Democrats essentially be the resistance like they were in the first Trump term? And when you look at the nomination like Kash Patel to lead the FBI, what should Democrats do to position themselves? Should they be doing everything they can to stop his confirmation?
I think Democrats know that when we fight, we demonstrate who we're for, and we have to explain why we're fighting, what Republicans are trying to do. I think on nominations, we have a chance to make the case that the Trump administration is poised to be the most corrupt administration in the last 100 years in the United States of America, that it is going to try to use government to get into people's personal lives and pursue political agendas and vendettas that have nothing to do with what voters actually want to see their elected leaders do. Now, we've seen this movie before. Last time when Trump was in power, they came for healthcare. And they passed a multi-trillion-dollar tax cut for the ultra-wealthy that was hideously unpopular, and Democrats won the majority in 2018. If you go back to 2004, Republicans came in 2004, tried to privatize Social Security, and then fell down in a debacle of corruption that Democrats fought back against. We need to draw those contrasts, show what we're for, and also cast a spotlight on what Republicans are doing that is so far off base from what voters in this country actually want.
And very quickly, as we wrap, Ben, you could have a sense, you could help dictate the primary calendar for the Democratic Party. Would you support changing the states the order of the states, not make South Carolina the first state in the primary calendar?
My platform in this campaign is unite, fight, and win. Part of uniting is a conversation in the party. We want to hear from everyone about how we ensure that our nominee is poised to win the general election, how we honor our coalition and the traditions of our party, and plan for victory. So as the chair of the DNC, I'll be helping bring together a conversation with the key states and all the DNC members across the country. If you're a DNC member, I'd look forward to a chance to try to earn your vote. And for all Democrats, this is the time for us to map out in every aspect of what we do how we contain the damage that Trump and the Republicans are going to try to inflict, and then win elections in all 50 states, in all the territories around the world, around the country, and then win down ballot, up ballot, all the way to a Democratic trifecta nationally and in as many states as possible over the next 4 years.
Yeah, well, didn't hear the answer to the primary calendar question, but perhaps that'll be something you'll address later on if you get the job. Ben Wikler making some news, running for the DNC chairman position. Thank you so much for joining Inside Politics Sunday. Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, man.
All right, my panel is back. Dave Weigel, you covered this very closely. There are lots of candidates in this race, at least several right now. What do you think of his chances to win?
Oh, very serious candidate. Ken Martin, the chair of the Minnesota DFL, came in the race with a lot of state party chairs behind him. They all also like Wikler, and there are people who are not fans of Martin who are fans of Wikler. You asked him about why somebody in a state that didn't vote for Kamala Harris should be the chair, which is a good question. But in Martin's Minnesota, the Democratic vote dropped from 2020 to 24, and it rose in Wisconsin. They just found more Republicans. And finally, the point he kept making to you about what we need to explain what we're fighting for, that framing, I think Democrats agree with parts of it, but he is unifying the Sanders wing of the party, which I feel is more isolated than ever. It doesn't really have a role in this next fight, that says the problem is you listen too much to big donors, Mark Cuban, Tony West, and to activists who say, yeah, my neighbors don't know what we stand for anymore. Yeah. And this is what Democrats, he's conveying what a lot of Democrats have said since the election.
Yeah, and look, this election is important because there really is the questions about who is the leader of this party right now. And he's trying to fill that void.
And which is why the DNC chair is important when you don't have any, the head of anything in Washington, right?
Because a lot of people may not know who it was under a President Biden, for instance.
Well, exactly. When there's a Democratic president, the DNC chair is not as much in the spotlight. So whoever does take this, they really do have a big job, and they will have a national platform in the way that perhaps Jamie Harrison did not during the Biden years.
And you heard there the stirrings of an argument for the midterm elections. Populist economics, that's how they're going to take on Trump. We're seeing a cabinet of billionaires and multimillionaires, presumably going to have conflicts of interests and scandals. And he also went on to talk about that personal issue of the president, and that will be what's on the ballot in the midterm election.
But a bigger challenge than the last time Trump won. Because when Trump won in 2016, Democrats were outraged and surprised and alarmed, and we saw that huge march on Washington and a determination to fight him everywhere they could. You don't see that today. You see Democrats discouraged, disheartened. That is going to be job one of whoever gets to chair the DNC.
And it's heard some fiery rhetoric from him. I asked him about the Trump resistance 2.0. It sounded like he kind of wanted that. Is the way the Democrats should position themselves going forward. All right, we'll see what happens. That election is on February 1st.